Huggin Molly. The name of this just cracks me up. Huggin Molly. And
Huggin'
in
Molly.
the southeast Alabama city of Abbeville, this is Henry County, very near, just to the north of Dothan.
Mhm.
This is very close to where I grew up.
Yeah. Huggin Molly is apparently a thing, and the story came about around 1890 to 1900. One of the stories, there's of course just like Crybaby Hollow. There's a few different variations of this. One story is of a woman in black thought to be an unwed mother that was allegedly poisoned by the child's father to get rid of her because she wanted to keep the child and he did not. Another story centers on a man, instead of a woman, it's a man in this case, that was in black who had died in prison and was roaming the streets of Abbeville trying to reunite with family. I put in here that is it a cautionary folk tale or a real apparition? Because parents, of course, over the years, and I'm sure they still do this because it's funny now, because you see what their slogan is on their "Welcome to Abbeville" sign.
Yeah.
Is don't stay out too late or Huggin Molly will get you. Well, the whole reason that Huggin Molly even became a story is, as I said, this story all culminated between 1890 and 1900. Sometime in around the late 19 teens, there was a man who was interviewed sometime in the 1960s that when he was about 19 years old, so sometime around 1915, 1920, had been working for a grocery store in downtown Abbeville and had been delivering groceries that day. And it was very close to dusk, and he was headed home. And he was walking to his house on East Washington Street, wherever that is in Abbeville, and heard footsteps behind him. And he turned around and he sees this very tall figure. So one of the other points about Huggin Molly is, I think I'll get to that in just a minute, but it's a very tall figure, so upwards of 7 feet tall. And as you see from the picture, it kind of emulates that's an adult in front, and that's Huggin Molly behind. So Huggin Molly's pretty tall.
Oh, right. Wow. I was thinking that was a kid.
Exactly. And the apparition was told that the way they killed you is they hugged you to crush you to death. So Huggin Molly.
Okay.
So
you would have been totally safe during the pandemic, since everybody had to stay 6 feet apart.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Huggin Molly might not have understood that.
Do you think Huggin Molly would have adhered to social distancing?
Probably not. Yeah. That gown I'm sure had her covered up pretty well. But he turns around, he sees this tall figure in a black robe, and he takes off running. And of course, after a few minutes, he turns around and looks, and it's gone. So I don't know if it was one of his friends playing a joke. But several years later, sometime in the 1930s or 40s, another man was walking home from work who had lived somewhere near downtown. He was on Elm and Clendenin streets, weird name, near his home, and it was the same situation. He hears footsteps behind him. He turns and looks. There's this tall figure wearing a black robe. He takes off running, and Huggin Molly is right on his tail, to the point that he gets home, runs up his sidewalk. His mother just happens to be on the front porch and sees this as well, and it disappears.
Okay.
So, not necessarily someone's friend who was playing jokes.
Yeah.
So, and interestingly, there's a restaurant in Abbeville called Huggin Molly's.
I see that.
So, as you can tell from their city limit sign, they play up Huggin Molly pretty heavy, to the point they even have a restaurant in Abbeville.
Okay,
which has been there for a very long time. It looks like a
so you said this is close to Dothan?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It's a little bit north, maybe 10, 15 miles, maybe.
Yeah, it's on 431.
Maybe further. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, as you're heading up towards Eufaula. Yeah, we'll stop in next time we head down to that part of the state.
We're gonna have to check that out. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So several other stories. Those are just a handful of the ones I thought were the most interesting that I could dig up.
I like that one.
Yeah, I don't know if they still have a soda fountain inside that restaurant or not. It's set up very 1940s, 50s-esque with the tile and all that. I think it had been a restaurant. I don't know if it's been Huggin Molly's all this time, but it had been a restaurant for a very long time. It's just called Huggin Molly's now. And it says drugs at the top. So, of course, this was one of the old drugstores.
Yeah.
So that had a restaurant in it as well from back years ago.
Yeah, that's kind of like Center and Gilstrap drugs back home in Geneva. My mom, I think she was at no, it wasn't, not Center Drugs, was not the restaurant. It was Gilstrap Drugs downtown. My mom worked there when she was in high school. She was a soda jerk there at the old drugstore. So I'm definitely interested to.
I like the look of that. I like I like the aesthetic of that. Yeah.
And kids, if you don't know what a soda jerk is, it's the person behind the counter waiting on you and getting your drinks and everything.
Yeah.
Old term. They weren't jerks. My mom was not a jerk. Except when I caused trouble, which was a lot.